Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I am Jason Crichton.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. So, Alan.
Yeah.
Another week.
Another week has gone by.
You usually say another $1.
Yeah. Another 50 cents this time.
I'm down to a quarter.
Exactly. I can only afford 50.
50 cents? What do you have 20 cents for? I don't have 10 cents. Long, old joke. So tonight's topic is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very, very important topic. Mm-hmm. It is the evil stepchild of a topic we've recently covered.
Yeah.
And this is the topic of complaining.
Complaining.
Okay. And so us named
collectively
this episode, How to Get Your Kids to Stop Complaining.
Okay.
And the answer is you can't. So we are done. Thank you. Good night.
Podcast at dudesadads.com. No, but isn't, like you said, it's the evil stepchild of whining, right? We talked about whining before.
We have.
Yeah.
And so this is very closely related to whining, but not quite.
No, but you're right. There is a difference.
Whining gnaws on you a little bit more than complaining. Complaining is actually pretty detrimental.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to talk about that. It's actually kind of detrimental to your mental health, and that's being serious. Whereas whining is just sort of annoying.
Yeah, I get it.
And whining lends itself a little bit more to children. I mean, we said adults whine too, but not quite as much.
Sure.
So, whining is really thought of as a child problem, children problem,
sure,
kid problem.
Yeah. Young adult
complaining is an everybody problem. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Okay.
And so the number one way to stop your kids from complaining is to stop complaining yourself.
Yeah, totally. See, and we've had this kind of as a motif, monkey see, monkey do type of thing.
Every single episode.
Go back to episode 1.
Yes. If you want to see sort of a pattern between episodes 1 through 87, it is, your kids will do pretty much what you do.
Yeah. Here's our
and for those who don't think that they affect their children or that their children just are, somehow this way.
Yeah.
Okay, there's maybe a little bit of that.
Yeah, it didn't come from some membrane from another reality. It actually probably stemmed from
It was not from some monkey up in the tree.
Exactly.
It's from you.
Yeah. Unless you have a lot of monkeys.
So we often complain to essentially get things off our chest. That's a common sort of, venting, if you will, or getting it off your chest. Not really to resolve the problem or fix things.
Yeah.
If you really think about it. It really makes most of our complaints completely worthless.
Right.
So you got to take a step back and kind of look at this. And we are all guilty of this. I come from a long line of complainers.
Oh, yeah. No,
I mean, my heritage, No, I mean, it's sort of innate, that people are just complainers or they're not.
Sure.
Sure. And you sort of follow that.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. So we often will complain about people. That's a common thing that happens. Mm-hmm. People will complain about their coworkers, their spouse, their kids. But it's interesting because complaining typically isn't to the person who can affect the outcome.
Right. The people who are closest to you probably feel the brunt of everything that you're dealing with at that moment, not the people who need to hear it.
So think about in the workspace.
Yeah.
You're talking with a coworker and they are complaining about the boss. Mm-hmm. They're complaining about a subordinate. They're complaining whatever.
Sure.
Oh, did you see this person? I mean, it adds zero value. And if anything, it is actually quite a negative.
Yeah.
So they're not talking to the person who can fix the problem.
Right.
And so that is one of the biggest things that as an adult, we need to learn is that we will complain forever about stuff that just can't be changed sometimes.
Right.
But 2 is often when it's about people, it's not to the person that needs to hear it.
Yeah.
So, we will complain to our buddy about our spouse he can't do anything.
He's like, all right, you want another beer? What do you want me to do?
No, or complaining to our spouse about a friend.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything.
Sure.
It doesn't help. It doesn't solve the problem.
But do you think there's some element of releasing pressure that's a buildup that's inside of you? Now, granted, I get where you're going with this, because I do think that you need to figure out, okay, how do I best direct this complaint to what needs to be resolved? Because in my case, a lot of times, I don't complain a lot, but when I do, it's mostly about almost an abstract thing that's going on, and there's no one that can really fix it. It's just my perception, and I even tell myself, I know this is just me going blah 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 about this.
No, you're totally right.
So it's releasing pressure.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct. There might be other alternative ways to do that.
Sure,
and it also depends on who your audience is.
Yeah,
that's an important aspect too of like who are you venting to?
Exactly.
In many cases, though, if we look at it, we are, like I said, we are venting to somebody that can't solve the problem.
Right.
So you are better off venting, maybe constructively discussing to the person who it is directed at.
Yeah. Well, if it's not a person,
then it's a different situation.
Right.
Then you have to look at, does it solve the problem? And I'll give you how it affects our kids and everything else. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about.
Right. Now we're going back to that.
Right. So we'll complain, especially here in Southern California, about traffic. Okay.
Yeah.
We complain, well, in other places too, food, friends, customer service.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like topics of what we complain about. How often are the complaints really reaching somebody who can help fix it?
Right.
So I'll give you another example. You're out to dinner with your significant other, and the service is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
You complain when you're sitting at the table, God, like what's going on? Why is this taking so long? That's a common thing that someone would say. What does that solve?
Yeah.
It doesn't solve the problem. So the problem would be talking to the waitress or waiter or service person and saying, hey, just wanted to find out what's going on with the food.
Yeah.
What's the timing? Whatever it might be. That goes towards solving the problem.
Sure.
So you have to recognize how often, and I'm guilty of this too, of saying something about a situation or that doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
Now, does that really help you feel better? Probably not. If it is, it's a very, very small amount in a very short amount of time versus actually talking to the person that can change the situation.
Yes. And I really feel like it's very effective when you have children around you, because like we said earlier, they're going to emulate these things and then just think that complaining is the way to solve problems and not just go solve the problem.
And I will give you an example of something that I've done and just calling myself out. Traffic.
Yes.
So I get it. I have tendency to get in the car, and especially if we're driving to grandparents or something, like, oh no, we've got traffic. And it's a negative. It's not. It's never a good feeling. So not too long ago, we're getting onto the freeway, and my kids, there's traffic. So
perfect.
I immediately I knew right then. I was like, I said to myself, I can't believe it.
That might as well have been a parrot.
That was so me. That and then of course me responding to them, okay, but what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden I have the answers.
Right.
And I would never say that. But yeah, that's exactly like a perfect example here in Southern California. Is like we all complain about traffic, but the reality is, what can I do?
Yeah.
I mean, can you try to use an app that goes around the traffic? Okay, whatever. It doesn't work that well.
Or just sit in it.
Yeah. Or you sit in it, you make time, you play a game.
Music, play games.
Listen to this podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean, turn on Dudes and Dads.
Right, totally. My kids love it. But my kids started complaining. It's exactly like what I do. And so noticing that I have a tendency now to not complain about traffic.
Yeah.
I was aware of that.
Yeah.
So I might just say, okay, well, it's going to take us an extra 4 hours. It's only supposed to take 30 minutes, but that's cool. It's fine. Hey, it's great. We've got time together. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to play the alphabet game 472 times. We're good. Can smell a little sarcasm.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's, certainly something. So we have issues and complaints like, all day long if we actually kind of audit ourselves. So this kind of accumulation of that frustration, and you kind of feel helplessness sometimes, like you feel like you can't do anything. It impacts our mood
For sure.
You know, especially if it builds up and there's multiple complaints. And it actually, I mean, there's some studies that said it affects our overall mental health.
Yes.
You know, so on a daily basis, these small incremental things about us complaining builds up.
I can take direct correlation with the traffic thing because I used to live in Los Angeles.
There you go.
And that's like, of all the cities in the United States, I'm saying that's probably the worst in
New York
traffic.
too.
Yeah, New York traffic, Boston, New York, some of the bigger cities, but Los Angeles just
it's horrible,
ridiculous. So I
San Diego's
got to
getting
a
there
point. Not by comparison, trust me. But when I was in traffic, I started making a point to look at things or be a little more observant about what's around me. I noticed that my name was in the word avalanche because I was behind of a truck. It said Alan. Oh, Alan's right there.
Well, oftentimes, I mean, especially if it's odd hours, the traffic is due to an accident. And I always think like,
in San Diego.
Yeah. And it's always, I'm like, I'm so grateful that that's not my situation.
No, you're right. It happened to me today. I was driving back.
Versus, I can't believe this person got in an accident when they're holding up the traffic, you know?
How dare they bleed all over the concrete?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and that's often, unfortunately, that's a lot of those situations where imagine, you know, putting yourself in that situation where you're the person who's like hurt, you know, and we're like, oh, I'm worried for, we're going to be a little bit late to karate.
I know. And it's like, you make your priorities, man. And like what I also will take away from the kind of your earlier point is that the amount of stress I didn't realize I was building upon myself was very apparent to after I moved out of Los Angeles into San Diego, when I'm like, wow, I'm not stressed. That's how much stress I put on myself when I was sitting in traffic.
Right.
So I didn't realize it until I was out of the element, how much damage I was doing to myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple different ways. I came up with 5 of them to reduce complaining. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, and these are things that actually worked for me. So the first is just to be aware. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, like, to start being aware and cognizant of your complaining, and recognize like when you're doing it. There was another one. This was a suggestion that was to me, and I did it. Was actually put a rubber band around your wrist and literally snap it. Every time you complain.
That sounds like a kind of like when you give yourself pain.
Yeah, and not hard. I mean, you're not bruising yourself.
Right, yeah, it's not,
but you're basically making a physical connection to that. Sure. It's very, very interesting to realize how the whole day. Tick, tick, tick. I mean, you realize how often you're doing something, and then you're like, okay, I want to avoid that. Yeah, I want to avoid that.
Not a big fan of the snapping.
It's very, very interesting to do that.
That's funny.
Another one is practicing mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So that could be yoga, meditation, etc.
Oh, going back to Johnny Blackburn. A guest on the show, he mentioned like being mindful of present moment, being absolutely mindful of what you are, like almost physically remember that your feet are on this ground, right? So that's the first step into that. Yeah,
I mean, I guess you can even add the presence part of that and the mindfulness, but that whether that brings you a little bit more happiness. I mean, because complaints are often a result of us being unhappy, or something like that. So that's something. Another big one is learning to be grateful. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. I really wanted to focus on this. We did an episode about being grateful.
Sure.
I found an app. And there's more than one.
You didn't have to be grateful.
Yeah. It's very interesting because it daily asks you and does and has different things that you do to be grateful. So it actually, will prompt you like, in the middle of the day or whatever. It says, name 3 things that you're grateful for, or, explain why a certain person in your life adds value to your life, or whatever. And it's these things, you start filling yourself with these positive affirmations. Yeah. And it is really interesting. I mean, I've been now doing it for a couple weeks. I do feel more grateful. It's like, it takes a couple weeks, to kind of sink in. Still got a ways to go, but because I was trying to think, because even with meditation, I was introduced to an app that, and I'm not a huge heavy phone user other than my emails and text. Like I don't use apps a lot. Right. But someone introduced me to
HeadSense.
What's that?
HeadSense?
No, it's a different one. Okay. But it allows you to track your time and do other things. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. That seems to defeat the purpose, but it actually has become great. Like, you can do different kinds of guided meditations. There's all kinds of stuff with it. So the idea, I was like, well, there's got to be an app about being grateful. And of course it was. And it was like a daily reminder, and you have to actually, write some things down. And it's like keeping a journal, to do that. Sure. I found it to be great. And then the other thing is, if you can affect the outcome, take action.
Yeah, that's the big thing is that instead of complaining, do something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can't change the situation, at least ask yourself, does the complaining help in any way?
Yeah.
Is it a release that helps long term? I mean, or is it just a pain to everybody else around you?
Sure.
Are you then becoming less likable because people that are constantly complaining have a tendency to not be as likable?
Oh, for sure.
And you've been around it where and you're like, I just don't. It's kind of a downer.
Yeah,
that person's a little bit of a downer.
I don't mind you letting off a little steam, but when you're just constantly like that, it's like,
Well, and everything's negative. It's like where you are, the situation, the people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like tell me some good stuff too.
Right.
Balance it, please.
Right. So for kids, there's typically a reason which is important to them. We may not understand it, or we may not agree that it's that important for us, but for them, it's going to be very, very important that they're complaining. They could feel disconnected. They don't there's a change in the location. So in other words, they're playing and then all of a sudden they have to switch and leave. Yeah. And that's a horrible thing. The transitions that they call them for kids. Or they're simply just not getting what they want.
Sure.
Especially when you're younger. I mean, we're as adults, we complain about that, not getting what we want. But as a kid, it's really, really powerful. I mean, to not, you want something so bad. I can think of tons of situations where they didn't get what they wanted and it ends up being a complaint. So here's a few things that you can do to kind of reduce the complaining and such for the kids. First is be calm and try to look at it from their perspective. Now, that's sometimes hard to do. But looking at the situation from their perspective, like I had mentioned before, let's say they're playing in a sandbox or they're playing something and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, let's go. Yeah. You got to be a little understanding that, that's, and so the second one is use empathy and validate their feelings or validate how they're, what the situation is. So as an example for that, say, or you could also give them a transition time, but saying I know you really wanted to play in that sandbox. Yeah. I know you really want to I know it's important to you to play that, but we need to do, X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Right.
So after you, validate their feelings, be curious, and ask questions. Yeah. And sometimes you'll find, some interesting information. So let's go back to that example. I know you validated they want to or you want to leave the park. You say, you know what? I know playing in the park is really, really important to you, but, this might not work as well as this example, but what is it that got you so upset? Do it. Well, I want to play. Oh, I totally get it. I know that you want to play. And you just you're kind of working with them and asking them kind of what's going on and validating it and doing that. But, and showing them love, that's kind of the next step is you have to show them love and compassion, but yet be firm. Yeah. And that's where you say, hey, I know you really wanted to do this and stay at the park and play all day, but we need to leave, or it's use but, use and. Sure. You say, I know you really wanted to, play here, and I know that that's important to you, and we need to leave because we need to go to practice or we need to get home or whatever. And so you are showing them the love, you're showing them the compassion, you're being understanding and validate their feelings, but you're being firm in what you still need to do. Sure. And you're not letting them walk over you.
Right, exactly.
So the reality is they're going to complain. That's the summary of all of this.
In summary, it's going to happen.
Yeah, it is going to happen. And they can learn how to cope with those complaints or how to manage that by just watching somebody handle it or not complaining.
Yeah, exactly.
And complaining isn't attractive. It's not attractive at all. Yeah. And it is something that pretty much in most cases doesn't provide any value.
It's interesting. And kids do understand context when they get a little older, I feel. And so you not complaining, they see actively that you're not doing that. Where it may have seen other parents react differently, or even teachers or people with their older peers or even their older siblings react differently, whereas you're showing them what to do and they look up to you the most. And they're like, wow, that was a really powerful moment for them. Right. And so they're like, well, maybe I should be that way.
Yeah. So I listened to Gary Vee, who's a marketing expert. And one of the things he often talks about is complaining, you know, and shout out to Gary.
Shout out to Gary V.
Like, not he doesn't need a shout out from here, but but he often talks about complaining and you know, if you're not complaining, everything's good, fine. But he never saw his mother complain ever, you know, and so that's one of the things he just doesn't complain. It's like there's just he didn't see it. You know, and so as part of his life, it's just not part of it. It's just, you know, you don't complain. That's the situation. You fix it or you do something about it and you move on. Yeah. You know, it's not even in the psyche of being able to do that. So no question. I mean, that's an example of, you know, seeing a parent not complain and not, you know, oh, woe is me. It's like, no, that's the situation. That's what it is. Yeah. You know, here's what you do with it.
Yeah. Try to move on from it.
Yeah. And so I've learned a lot just from that, from the business standpoint and just of, you know, sort of interpersonal relations in that aspect of, you know, especially same thing in business. It's like, you know, people who will say that they're not successful because of X, Y, and Z. It's a complaint.
Yep.
You know? Oh, well, the market, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, the pricing or our competitor did, what, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it. Yeah. Just make something else happen and move on. So
yeah, that was the turning point for me in terms of careers, was making the decision not to complain and just do something about it. I literally changed my career by doing that.
Totally.
So yeah, I can totally.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary V. At the time, he didn't exist for me. But now.
Yeah. I mean, he's been saying the same thing for years, you know, 10 years or whatever. It's really, really powerful. And so it's definitely good advice. It makes sense for children. It makes sense for us as just as adults. The complaining just doesn't add any value.
For sure.
So, and if you're not complaining, then you've won.
Yeah.
You know, so it's good. So with that, I think we're done.
Dudes to Dads podcast at dudesToDads.com. You can email us.
Yes.
And then
feedback.
Twitter, Dudes to Dads.
At Dudes to Dads.
At Dudes to Dads.
Facebook.
DudesToDads.com.
It is.
What else we got?
Stitcher
and iTunes. Leave a review. Do not leave complaints.
No.
Do you want to be true to this show? Leave us positive affirmations would be good.
That's good.
Or something you
constructive
might not know.
criticism.
Constructive criticism is also
with a 5-star.
5-star constructive criticism. And subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. That'd be great. We got some videos up there. Yeah, this might be a video. I'm pretty sure it will be.
I think so.
Yeah. And those are the multiple ways you can get a hold of us. And there's also dudesadads.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, thank you.
Thank you.
I think my head's going to hit the pillow.
No complaints about that.
No, that wasn't a complaint. That was just a statement.
It's a statement. It's just going to happen.
I didn't say I'm tired. I just said my head will hit the pillow. So with that, thank you again.
Thank you.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week.